Welcome into the Pro Wrestling Musings podcast, where my name is Griff from GA, commander of the armies of Pro Wrestling Musings, general of Pro Wrestling Statistics, and loyal servant to the true creator, Craig from PWM, and I will have my vengeance on people who pay too much attention to AEW Dynamite ratings every Thursday. Thank you once again for joining us, and joining me today is a man who has become a regular on the Pro Wrestling Musings podcast, Anthony from Down Under, and a new guest here that I'm very proud to introduce to you, the winner of the first ever Pro Wrestling Musings Fantasy League, which does exist, and this man won it.
Hard one.
It is Sam, writer for Pro Wrestling Musings, as well as some other places that I'm sure he will tell you about as I want him to. So we have a lot of Dynamite to cover today. It was the first show after Blood and Guts. It was absolutely stuffed to the gills. And so there's just so much to talk about it with, of course, the statistics that we have become so used to talking about. So let's start where all good things start, and that's at the beginning. Jon Moxley versus Yuji Nagata with the IWGP US title on the line. There's obviously a lot of statistics to go over and everything. We'll talk about it. The first thing I do want to say, though, is this had such a big fight feel to it. I feel like the commentators didn't put over enough how huge this was, how big of a deal this really is. But in terms of the way it was produced, it felt like a huge deal. When they follow Nagata with the camera through the tunnel, and it just has that feeling of like this is a prize fight, which I absolutely loved. And the match itself, I absolutely loved as well. So, Sam, you are the new guy on the block here today, so we'll start with you. What were your thoughts on this match, the first ever New Japan title being defended on AEW Dynamite?
Griff, like you, I just love this. I love the presentation. Felt like a massive deal. It was just after he lost the AEW title. Jon Moxley said one of his, just one of his classic promos, and he said, "All roads in pro wrestling lead through me," and never was that more evident than this match here. Getting someone like Yuji Nagata, who's come over from Japan. He spent 2 weeks in quarantine. Probably he'll spend more time in quarantine on the way back. They have gone a long way to get this match, and it was given the kind of presentation that it deserved with the, as you said, the split screens as they went in. They both had their seconds. Yuji Nagata had Ren Narita. Mox, of course, had Eddie. And yeah, this was a fantastic match. When in the end, it wasn't super long. I would have loved to have seen another 5 minutes, but I'm the kind of person with Jon Moxley would always love another 5 minutes. But it was everything it needed to be. Both men looked really strong, and in the end, I think it was just if we look at the statistics, it was a very even match, similar amounts of everything just about, except for finishes. And it was just, look, Mox is in his prime right now. Yuji Nagata is a veteran. I loved seeing him in there, and I loved the respect spot at the end. And you could see that, Mox was having the time of his life against Nagata in this match. And yeah, this felt like a big deal. Once again, just emphasizes the importance that Jon Moxley is in wrestling outside of the WWE. I don't think there is a more important man in the world, really, and a bigger name. And the fact that he's been able to get New Japan to do this and being able to get AEW to do this as well, having New Japan have an AEW title defended on Dynamite, just emphasizes that and shows that.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. What I really liked about this, and it's something that I want to get into, much later on if we have the time, but just, something I want to mention quickly is this match was a very New Japan style match, and not just the way it was fought, but the way it was presented and the way that, the commentators kind of treated it, and everything about it was like, if this had happened on a New Japan show, it would have fit right in. And I really liked that aspect of it because it was so different. And the fact that it opens the show as well was something that if you are a Western wrestling fan that has never seen a New Japan match, you've basically just, opened up the show and boom, here's a New Japan match. I really liked that quality of it. And again, I want to talk more about, that style later on in the show. As far as statistics goes, this was as hard-hitting of a match as you will ever see. It was awesome. it was everything that I want to see from Jon Moxley, just looking like an absolute tank. And he looked fantastic. And Nagata, I mean, the dude's 53. Like, this man is 53. My father is what, 54? And if I tried to imagine my dad doing something like this, I mean, he'd probably break himself in 19 different ways. And Nagata's just out here doing, exploder suplexes off the middle and taking knee drops on the apron. And, like, I mean, this guy is awesome. And Jon Moxley is awesome. And this match was awesome. Anthony, obviously Sam and I are pretty big fans of this. What did you think of the IWGP US title match here to open the show?
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I loved the Wild Thing. I popped massive when that started playing. I thought it was so good. It wasn't until later that I found out that it actually had meaning in that behind it, which I didn't know. So that just added a whole nother layer to it. I do hope it's only a one-time thing, because I don't think it fully suits Mox's character. But, for this moment, it was really great. I enjoyed that the commentary did, and the announce team did say, this is going to be fought under New Japan rules. And, they said, okay, this is, these are the differences. So me as a fan, I'm not 100% on board with New Japan, just because I don't have enough time to watch it. I watch it here and there, but not as regularly. So sometimes I forget, what exactly is going on. But, it was just a good little reminder for people like myself, or people who don't know what those rules are, what's actually going to happen here. When we look at the strikes, and that the strikes are obviously in Mox's favor, but they hit each other a lot. The strike downs were dead even with a 5-for-5. The grapples, 3-2 dives. Obviously, Mox loves his dives. I'm surprised he only did one, to be honest. Submissions are very even. So, as Sam said, it was a very even match across the board. And obviously, Mox just hit those two finishes to win the match, and that's where it's obviously come across the line. But very, very even match. Also, with that, there was some photos afterwards, obviously, of Mox and Nagata having a beer together, which is just great. I guess the saddest part for me is that Nagata's already gone back to Japan, and that I was hoping that would see him on Dark, maybe, getting a couple wins on, wins up on Dark, that way if he ever comes back to AEW, he suddenly has a few wins, I would have loved to see him on maybe Elevation and Dark. We won't get that, but, it would have been great. Little fun part, it looks like that Shinsuke Nakamura from WWE may have been at AEW. He's tweeted a picture. He tweeted during the show saying there, and that there's been some photos of him with Nagata after the episode where they're together, and Chris Jericho's in those photos as well. So it was good that Shinsuke got to see him, because I know that they've got a history. So that's really good that, that we all pretend that there's this war going on, but all the wrestlers like each other. They all happy, they all support each other, and, we should probably do the same a little bit. But yeah, in terms of the match, fantastic match. Great way to open the episode. And very different opening versus how the episode closed.
Yeah, it's a good point you make, just about the fact that this is a lot different than the last quote unquote war that we saw, where it definitely seemed that in that time in the 90s, there was this level of loyalty and dislike of the other guy, so to speak. Whereas now, wrestling is a much bigger community, so we get to see more things like this. So I'm glad you brought that up. I think that's very valuable. As far as the way that this match actually progressed, I really liked this because it shows you that even if you fight a match in a particular style, it doesn't necessarily mean that the characters match it. And what I mean by that is Moxley basically fought like the heel in this match, like you would expect a heel to fight. He was on offense for a majority of the match. If you look at the match graph, it looks like it looks like a heel match, kind of inverted, I guess you would say, where Moxley starts out hot and then falls behind and then starts coming back. But he was the one who was doing all the taunts, and it was it was weird. Like, it wasn't, the characters didn't match the style. I don't quite know how to put words behind it, but I really liked the way that this match was done. because both men are baby faces, and yet they generated heat in the match just by the way they fought, which I thought was just a testament to how good these two are, how well they understand ring psychology. That's what happens when you do that, that even if there isn't a lot of babyface heel heat going in, you can create it just in the way that you do it. It's actually very similar to what we see in mixed martial arts. Anyone who watches mixed martial arts knows that a lot of times the guys go in and they don't dislike each other. In fact, there's a lot of mutual respect. But once the cage door closes, now you have this intense scrap. And that's kind of what this match became. Two guys that, as we saw at the end of the match, have a ton of respect for each other. But man, in between those ropes, while that match was going on, you would think that these two guys were in like a blood feud or something.
Well, that's what Mock said before the match anyway. He said, look, when I respect you, but once I get in the ring with you, I don't respect you, and I'm going to beat you because you called me a punk. And it's very New Japan what they did. Like, you look at something like Moxley versus Ishii, which was a much longer match, but similar in this structure. And this is just the kind of wrestler that John Moxley is, and the kind of character he has. It's a character that can be very intense, and can get in these matches and really put a beating on someone. We're going to talk about Miro and Darby Allin later, but that match actually made me think of Moxley and Darby Allin, which is an example of this, where Moxley, is very intense and is playing, in a sense, I guess, the heel, but not really. He's just an intense character who will put a hurt on someone, on whoever steps in the ring with him. We haven't seen a lot of Eddie Kingston singles as a face yet, but I'm sure he will be similar. It's just these intense characters who, once they get in the ring, all bets are off. But they're still once it comes down, what a man he is. He has a beer. He'll have a beer with you and have a whiskey and have a cigarette or whatever floats your boat. He'll do that with you afterwards, and show your respect afterwards. But all bets are off once the bell rings.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And it contrasts so well with his feud going on with the Elite, which is a group of men that he does not have a lot of respect for. And we saw it in a later segment in the show where he and Kingston start trashing the Elite's locker room. And you can see the contrast. He's as intense during that segment as he was during the match with Nagata. But after the match, as you say, there's all of this respect and this idea that, these two... they could have gone and grabbed a beer together and, reminisced and talked about their time in New Japan and all that. That's not going to happen when Moxley and Kingston take on the Elite at Double or Nothing. There's no respect there, but Moxley's still going to fight with that level of intensity. And again, it just goes back to how good the character work has been from Jon Moxley, that you can see that clear distinction in these two feuds, even though in the match he's going to fight the exact same way. It was the same thing against Kenny Omega as well. Speaking of the Young Bucks, they were in a title match as well. I think we can talk for hours about Moxley and Nagata, but there's so much to talk about on this show. The Young Bucks were in a title match against SCU. It was essentially a title versus career match in a sense. SCU had to break up if they lost. Of course, they did lose. This drew a lot of criticism, not for the match itself, but for the build, mainly in that people who had watched TNA Impact and knew Kazarian and Daniels and all their history were saying, this is a huge moment. Why are we not making more of this? Most of it has happened on Dark, which is a criticism that I personally understand, just because these two guys are such good character workers as well, that they get into the match and you can see their level of intensity and their level of desperation to win these so that they can stay together as a team. And it's kind of like, well, I wish you had told me more of this before, so that I can actually see these guys and do what they do. The match itself, though, I thought was absolutely brilliant. I thought this was fantastic. I thought the Bucks are phenomenal heels. They're so good. And they're heels in a traditional sense where if you look at the taunt stat, 21 taunts in a 14-minute match from the Young Bucks. So they're taunting these guys over once a minute, which in pro wrestling, I mean, it's all the time that they're doing this. But they... On top of that, 41 strikes with just 52% of the match offense. So they are so fast. They get at you so quickly, but they're taunting you while they're doing it. They're talking at you while they're doing it. And it's like just the worst the worst kind of, anyone who's played like pickup basketball, or both of you guys are from Australia, so whether that's pickup soccer or, whatever it is that you're doing, there's that one guy that just is like constantly talking. Anything he does is just constantly jawing, and that's what the Bucks are. And to me, it just works. Like, they're so good at doing it. So Anthony, the tag title match, I really loved. What did you think about this?
Yeah, look, I enjoyed the match. I thought it was SCU's best match in quite a while, and it was really good to be reminded that, hey, these guys are a really good tag team, because you tend to forget that when you don't see them fighting at this level or with this level of opponent. Them getting wins on Dark and fighting on Dark, yeah, that's great, but they're not fighting at this level. This is a very high level of match, and you get to be reminded of that. My only issue with it is that they didn't let it breathe at the end. The Mox and Eddie segment, that should have been after the break, and they should have had the hug in the middle, given these two guys, these two phenomenal guys who had been with the company at the start. They should have given them a minute to have that hug, have that moment, especially since after the match, Christopher Daniels posted on his Twitter saying, "I think that might be it." And he's getting on with age at the moment. So if this was his last match, his retirement match, obviously what a way to go. But them not giving him the time is just a disservice to me, and is not fair, especially for the level that they're putting their careers, their careers over multiple companies on the line for this one moment. It should have been definitely bigger. There was also a lot of complaints about the "I'm sorry, I love you" moment with the super kick. Now, they did say on BTE, they said, "I am going to do this to you," and then when they did it, and he kicked out of it, because that's how the Bucks wanted to send them off. They wanted to give them that send off of the "I love you" moment, and when they kicked out of it, you could see how angry it was. Like, I thought it was great. I thought it was a great moment.
Yep.
But I can understand why people didn't like it as well, but then people need to remember that Ric Flair was literally back in the ring only, not long after receiving that super kick. So, his retirement didn't last very long. Yes, it was a great moment, but he didn't really retire. And I think a lot of people forget that about Ric Flair, it was his retirement from WWE, not his retirement from wrestling. And
probably because they wish that was his retirement from wrestling.
Oh, yeah. And I think he does himself as well. So, but yeah, look, match, when we look at the strikes and that, again, what you said is correct. You see the Bucks basically nearly double their strikes. They're so fast, and you can see it when they're in the ring. But you get the pin attempts. SCU got 9 pin attempts on them. The fouls, the 10 fouls. Obviously, the moment where they're spraying, and they said that they're spraying with the water. Don Callis said on commentary, he's like, "Oh no, they're just trying to stop the blood." He's trying to make it seem like he's doing something nice when they definitely were not. So it was good. It was a really good match. That was just soured by the ending for me, with them not being given that chance to have that final hug and have that moment of holding their hands in the air, having that hug, holding their hands in the air, and saying thank you to everyone.
Yeah, I agree. Sam, I'm going to play devil's advocate here. I want both of you to talk about this, because as far as the match goes, I think we've pretty much covered it. So, Sam, if you want to add anything in a second, but I want to say this about the ending, just to play devil's advocate. And I agree with you, Anthony. I wish they had done a lot more with this. But to play devil's advocate for it, I was talking to a friend of mine while it was happening, and he said that he basically feels like this is a way to get SCU off TV as a team, get them out. Kazarian still has something to give as a singles guy, so probably do something with him as a singles guy, and Daniels let him do whatever it is that he's going to do. To me, that's what this felt like. I feel like this is a situation where AEW said, there's going to be a minority of fans who are very familiar with SCU. They watch BTE. They watched them in Ring of Honor. They watched them in TNA. They know these guys. And so, they want to see a real proper send-off. But the majority of our audience is going to be people who don't know SCU that well. They know Kazarian and Sky from when they were tag champions, but they don't know Kazarian and Daniels. They actually don't know Christopher Daniels that well at all. So what we want to do is remove SCU as a team because we have all of these young teams that are coming up. So we want to give them time. So we'll just remove SCU, and most people are not going to care that much because they don't know. So that, to me, seems like the way that AEW kind of went about it. But Sam, talking about this match and specifically the ending, what did you think? Sam has forgotten to unpress his mute button.
Goodness me. You have me on. First time I'm on.
It happens to everyone. It happens to everyone.
Guys, if I'm not back, this is the reason. Look, specifically talking about the ending, I agree with Anthony. I think we're going to talk about some other stuff later. I think you can see how AEW have rushed themselves in moving in getting to Double or Nothing. I think the 2 weeks that Revolution got pushed back really has affected their schedule, and everything is being pushed together. So they have to, they had to build to this Mox Eddie match, and they needed to have another inciting incident. So they've just shoved it in at the end of this one. Yeah, it would have been nice to give it just time to breathe because, part of the heartbreak and part of the Young Bucks are just playing these 2 completely irredeemable pricks, and the fact that they would do this to 2 people that they love and that they're supposed to be friends with, part of the point and to get that across is to show the emotion that these 2 people have, the love that these 2 people have for one another, that being Frankie and Christopher Daniels, and seeing them having to be split up by these 2, as I said, absolute pricks. And one thing I'd just love to say about the match before we move on is the fire from Frankie Kazarian. I almost messaged Craig and was like, could you break down who had the most offense between each of Daniels and Kazarian? Because the last stand from Frankie Kazarian was just incredible stuff. And the final hope spot where Christopher Daniels, where it looked like he could have got it, was just... It was so heartbreakingly close. This was such a perfect match for a final. And look, if this is Christopher Daniels' final match, man, tip of the cap to him. What an incredible career he has had. Stretching back to the late 90s through TNA, through ROH. There is not a promotion outside of WWE that he hasn't wrestled for, and that he hasn't carried himself like an absolute champion, an absolute stud. He is one of the greats of modern pro wrestling, particularly on the indie circuit. And what a way to go out for him, bleeding at the hands of these 2 absolutely insufferable twats. And I wanted to bring up that super kick thing, because the thing that it reminded me of was the Shawn Michaels match against The Undertaker at WrestleMania 26. The way he went out doing The Undertaker's taunt. He did the
throat slit.
The throat slit, that's it. And then he slapped The Undertaker in the face, and then The Undertaker went, "Nah, you don't do that." And that's what this reminded me of, like Shawn Michaels, the final slap in the face to wrestling, that was from him, which I think actually fits his career quite well. Fitted his career quite well. And it fits for the Young Bucks as well to be doing this sort of thing. And, they know exactly what they're doing. They know exactly who they're pissing off, and they're doing it so intentionally and so well. And look, breaking up SCU is just another part of that. Breaking up this beloved team and in this incredible match.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And to talk about that super kick spot as well, I think what a lot of people, if you don't like that, what I would ask you to remember is that this isn't something new for the Young Bucks. The Young Bucks, specifically in AEW and really their whole careers, they have...
Wait till you see him in PWG doing suck it chops.
Well, exactly. That's the thing. I mean, remember back to when the Bucks were baby faces going against FTR. In that match, the Bucks pulled out, I don't know how many tributes to different tag teams over the years, and they're doing tributes to the Rockers and to the Rock and Roll Express and to the Midnight Express, and and I think they got the tag team of Doom in there at some point, and like all of these different tributes. And when they were baby faces, it was this kind of cool thing that it gets them over because you say, oh, look at how much studying they've done of the history of tag wrestling. And now that they're heels, they do the same thing, but it's in a very mocking way. So they mock this Shawn Michaels spot with Ric Flair, which obviously is one of the great WrestleMania moments in recent history, if not ever. And so they just mock that, and, you know, Daniels kicks out, and I'm really glad he did, because it does, you know, give that moment where you think, you know, at some point, I was going into this, I'm like, yeah, SCU's going to lose. They're done. But during the match, I was thinking, well, you know, maybe they won't. Like, what if SCU does it here? Like, I know they're not going to.
I had the same thought. I had the same thought.
Well, I think that's just a testament to how great SCU are and how well this match was booked. The Young Bucks, even though they were the heels, and as we know, as we just talked about, the heels tend to get more match offense as far as percentage goes. This match was almost dead even. The SCU makes their comeback, and it's a sustained comeback. If you look at the graph from basically minute 10 through the end, that was their comeback. And so if the comeback happens over a you know, like a minute or two, then it gets a lot of heat. You know, the crowd gets into it. But then you get to the finish of the match, and it's kind of like, okay, so we got that brief hope spot, but then we know the Bucks are going to win. But when the comeback is sustained over a long period of time, almost half the match, the way it was in this case, that's what made you really believe, you know what, maybe they are going to do the title change here. Maybe SCU is going to survive as a team, which I was positive wasn't going to happen, but during the match, SCU made me think it was going to happen. So good for these guys, and I second both of you. If this is it for Christopher Daniels in the ring, this is the way to go out. This was a phenomenal match, and he's going to be a fantastic asset to whatever it is that he does now. If he's going to produce, if he's going to train, or if he just retires and goes off into the sunset to be a family man or whatever, I think he deserves it, whatever he decides to do. Final championship match of the night, Darby Allin takes on Miro, TNT title. This was pretty much what you could have expected from a match like this. And Miro looks like a killer. He looks like a monster. Darby Allin doing what he does best. And here's what's so surprising about this that I want to start the conversation with. I'll kick it to Sam first. Darby Allin has the majority of the match offense here. 64% of the match offense in this one, which absolutely did not feel like it was happening. It felt like Miro dominated. It felt like Miro was unstoppable. But here is Darby Allin actually controlling a lot of the match. I mean, how did he actually pull this off? How did the match look like this when the stats look the way they do?
Statistics-wise, I'm not sure if these actually start when the segment started or when the match started, because Miro did have that big period beforehand where he was just tossing Allin around the outside.
I kind
of said earlier, though, this match... Yeah. Which could be, you know, part of that if you add it was a couple of minutes that Miro was just throwing Darby Allin around. Look, as I said, this kind of reminded me of a demented version of the Darby Allin versus Jon Moxley title match from last year, which is a match that I absolutely adore. In that you kind of knew going in that Allin was no chance, but through his fire and his speed and his tenacity, he makes you believe, and he fights his way into these things against opponents that he's got no business going up against. You put Darby Allin next to Miro and you say these two are going to be fighting, and it's just like, well, this little scrawny skateboard runt is going to be against this just absolute beast of a man, this Bulgarian bear of a man who's like got muscles on top of muscles. And, you know, like, even though Allin had more offense, it's obvious by every single thing that, you know, Miro, when he hits, when he gets you, boy, you're in for a ride. And the way that Allin sold it, every time that he got slammed around, he just has no regard for his body when he gets thrown around. He'll land on his neck, he'll land on his head, he'll land on his shoulder. And because he's so slight, he can kind of get away with it more than a lot of other people can. You know, similar in the way that the Japanese Joshis get away with doing some really risky looking neck bumps just because they're so much smaller. They've got less weight coming down on their joints. But, he just makes whoever throws him around look like absolute killers. And, that was the story of this match. Allin fought his way into it, and you thought for a bit like, yeah, mate, look, maybe he can do it. He's because of his fight, because of his tenacity, but in the end, came up. It was just too big a man to chew.
Yeah, there's two things I want to say about this. First off, about Darby Allin, as a more general point about him as a wrestler. From the beginning of him in AEW, he was known. The original tagline for Darby Allin was "the man indifferent to pain," I believe it was. Excalibur really tried to put that over. That kind of disappeared as he became a more serious wrestler, and they realized, okay, we actually do need him to sell if we want him to be a champion. But that was the character, and obviously in real life, these guys are not indestructible. The Darby Allin, the way that he fights, does have a shelf life. And I've heard him talk about it, and I've heard lots of other people talk about the fact that his career is not going to be very long. He's not going to be 53 years old fighting Jon Moxley the way Yuji Nagata is. That's just not what he plans to do. But what we know about him right now, he's 27 years old, 28 years old. Right now, he is mega over. He is a ratings draw for as much as that means to you. But we do know that people love watching him. So for the little bit of time that he's giving us, going his absolute hardest, he is succeeding. He's becoming one of the best wrestlers in the world. And so it's not going to last forever. But for right now, it certainly works. And I'm glad that we're watching it. In this particular match, Miro, I think this is really, really smart what they did. I am in the minority. I actually thought Darby was going to win this match. I figured that AEW's philosophy would be, people are kind of they're not happy with the way we used Miro, so what we're gonna do is let's have Darby beat him, and then we'll do like a soft reset on Miro, and then we can have him go after the title again or whatever it is that he wants to do. That's what I thought was gonna happen. I'm in the minority, but I think AEW, knowing that, said, all these people, and we've built Miro. He's a monster. He is unconquerable, pretty much. So we're actually not going to have him take most of the offense because what Miro is about. So AEW went into this match saying the entire match we're going to try to make sure that people believe Darby Allin could win this, knowing that the majority of people believe that Miro was going to win. So that's why the match offense looks the way it does. That's why Miro only gets 36%, because he has this extended beatdown before the match. And then during the match, as you said, Sam, when he hits you, it's like a freight train, and everyone knows that. So the whole match, Darby Allin is getting most of the offense because he's making his comeback throughout the entirety of the match, just like we just talked about. His comeback was prolonged. If you look at the graph, Darby Allin, his offense shoots up right when he starts getting Miro into all these different submissions, because that's what they want. They want you to believe that Darby Allin has a chance here, and their entire match was structured around that. I thought that it did exactly what it was supposed to do, because the whole match I thought Allin might win this, and the whole match I thought Miro's a total killer. They got both things over at the same time, and I think that's another testament to Darby Allin as a wrestler, the way that he sells, the way that he has been booked to this point, and the way Miro's been booked, and just the way he looks. Let's talk about Miro for a second. This guy, the amount of work he's done on his body to look like this, and to be able to play this gimmick and get it over. If you remember in WWE when he was Rusev at first, I mean, he didn't look like this. Like, he was big, but he wasn't muscular like this. He wasn't toned the way he is. I think it's really important. The work that he's done to now make himself look the way he does, I think is really important to put over the kind of character that you're asking me to believe. Because this guy, it doesn't look like he has an ounce of body fat on him. It looks like he is 280 pounds of pure muscle, and he could tear someone like Darby Allin in half. That's what it looked like in this match. So, ultimately, I'm going to join the crowd here. Miro, he's over with me. I think he's going to be a great champion. I don't know who's going to beat him for the title, but that's a debate for another time. So, Anthony, I know that you've been high on Miro when you've been on the podcast, and you've talked about him. So when you look at this match, when you look at the fact that Darby Allin has almost 2/3 of the match offense, it's so antithetical to what we've seen from him in the past. Do you think that this worked for the kind of story that they were trying to tell and ultimately putting Miro over as the TNT champion here?
Yes, and there's a couple different reasons. So, first reason is that during the match, if you remember, Darby was hitting him, but he wasn't going down. And that's really important. So this increased strike amount, yeah, that's great. But it took a lot more strikes to get him down. And the commentary did this, that when he finally got him down, they go, oh, he finally got him down. You know, they made it seem like a big thing, and you could tell that he was struggling to get him even off of his feet. And that's why I actually suspected that Darby was going to have more strikes, because he is the faster person. And when he was doing his comeback moments, he was hitting him with a lot of moves very quickly, where Miro was only hitting him with a few, but they were very destructive hits, and they were very effective hits, where Darby was just trying whatever he could to
Darby
even
was
just get him off
down
the
a tree.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
he was doing the chopping down the tree moment. So, look, it's not an actual surprise to me to see this, because the way that they were mirroring it was Darby was trying to get him off of his feet, and it was taking a god-awful lot to do so. For a couple of things I want to touch on, because I don't want to reheat everything that you guys just said, because literally, I agree with everything that you said. So just looking at what we've actually got here. So for the numbers, for the ratings, the amount of people that were watching this one was 969,000 were watching the Allin versus Miro TV match, with 448,000 being in the 18 to 49 demo. That was the highest all night. For that demo, it was the second highest total number all night for AEW, but it just shows that this is a constant thing with Darby, with his other match the fortnight before also being quite high, with the 470,000 for him versus 10 and 909,000 in total, which again was one of the higher numbers on the night. So he's 100% proven himself to be a regular strong point. My only hope is that AEW continue to have this TNT title on the main event.
Yeah.
Even with Miro, because it's proven that it's a very important title. I don't know if you saw, but Darby actually did a talk to the crowd afterwards, which was recorded, where he basically said he doesn't care about any other titles. This is the title. This is the most important title to him, that he will rebuild himself, that he will come back for it, because this is the only title he cares. He doesn't want the AEW world title. This is the A title to him. And I think that his run, like Cody introduced this title. Brody did a great job with it, apart from a few things, but obviously we've got the great status that he brought on with that squash match, which was just an amazing moment. But Darby has really defined this in this last part, these last few weeks. This is what I envisioned the TNT title being all about, being the main event, being the biggest match, being the biggest draw, and I hope that they continue it with Miro, because my only thing is that, yes, he's a heel, but they should still be having him regularly defended in that main event spot. And I really hope that they do, because it's proven to be a ratings draw and a must-watch event.
I completely agree. I want to point this out, because I am someone who, during the Allin and Sting versus Team Taz feud that was going on, I was critical of it because Allin was the TNT champion at the time. And so I said, you've got the champion, you've got the television champion, a guy who's supposed to be on TV every week, and he's never fighting for this belt, and really he just exists for Sting to be the one in that feud. That, Sting's the new guy, so we want to see Sting more, and Darby's just kind of there because, both of them have painted faces, so it kind of works. We went from that to now Darby Allin being one of the biggest draws in the company, one of the most over wrestlers in the company, a guy that a lot of people, to your point, Anthony, feel like have defined what the TNT title is supposed to be. That is entirely due to Darby Allin completely switching the way that he works in matches, and AEW switching the way that they kind of book the TNT title. Cody Rhodes did an open challenge, and it facilitated a lot of new people entering the company. Chief among them, of course, was Eddie Kingston, who now is in a main event level feud, and he started by fighting for the TNT title with Cody Rhodes. So they go from the open challenge often opening matches and introducing these new guys to now the TNT title closing the shows and being a huge ratings draw and a way to build current wrestlers that they have, raise them up to have these kind of main event level matches. The title has been so versatile in its short time in existence, and I think that is due to AEW having and its management having such an appreciation of the history of pro wrestling, because this does mirror what we think of as the traditional television championship, whether it was in ECW or the countless companies that have had TV championships. The whole point of that was championships that you see defended on television. It's not, you don't have to wait for pay-per-views to see that. And so that's exactly what AEW is doing with this title, and it just works so well. And I believe that Miro will continue that. The matches are just going to look a lot different because Miro's a lot different than Darby.
This is a big challenge for Miro. He has never been amazing as a work, like always good, never terrible, but he's not, when Darby Allin gets saddled with a gimmick and you're like, oh, he's going to get saddled with a schedule and you're thinking he's going to be defending every second week or every week or however often he's done it, you're like, oh yeah, this is going to be good. If I'm seeing Miro at the top, in the main event of every Dynamite, I'm not sure how good that's going to be. So this is a challenge for Miro, because in the past he has not been someone that I would personally have picked for that. As I said, never terrible, never bad, but he's not of the Darby Allin level of worker. So this is a challenge for him. He is not a man who he's a man who has a lot of has had that tag of a missed opportunity in the past working for the WWE, but he has not set the world alight as much in AEW as some would have hoped. This is a big opportunity for him, but it's a big challenge as well. I'm interested to see what happens.
I'm really glad you brought that up. I think that's a great point, because it is the other side of the coin. There's so many people that are happy about Miro getting this opportunity, and because he was so white hot, he was so over doing the whole Rusev Day gimmick and everything. And I was not watching wrestling at the time, so I've only gone back and experienced that, and I understand why everyone, why that was so over, but it doesn't have the same effect on me. But I agree with you. As a worker, he has never been excellent. So Darby Allin consistently putting on excellent matches. Is Miro going to be able to live up to that? I think it's going to say a lot about the challengers and a lot about him. Maybe he's grown a lot as a worker. We actually haven't really seen a lot of this level of Miro in AEW. He's either been in tag matches or he's been on Dark. So, maybe he has made huge strides as a worker. Maybe they'll pair guys with him that just work well with him. I don't know, but my mind is very open about this. I want to talk one more thing about Darby, the now former champion. He, as we keep alluding to, was a big ratings draw every week. And I kind of, cut my promo about ratings in the very beginning of the show. And so, I do think that they're useful in telling us who is really over with the fans. It's one thing to, get the cheers from the live audience. It's one thing to do numbers on social media, but who actually makes people turn on their televisions and watch? It's been Darby Allin ever since pretty much the end of his feud with Team Taz. He's been a big draw in this main event spot. All kinds of different matches he's fought. He's fought, kind of old style Southern matches with the likes of JD Drake. He's fought hardcore Falls Count Anywhere with Matt Hardy. He's fought, very even kind of modern style matches with like Preston Vance and, guys like that. So with Darby now not being the champion, presumably not main eventing Dynamite every week, is this too quick to have taken the belt off of a guy that is so proven that he can lock down that main event slot and have these great matches? Did AEW pull the trigger too quickly on getting this belt off of Darby Allin? Should there have been more of a build? We'll start with Sam on this one.
I don't think so. This is has been an incredible run for Darby Allin, and has been it's absolutely certified and cemented him as not just a player of the future, but one of the big stars in the company today. We knew, the start of when they first started signing people, and you had a look at Allen, and he went for 20 minutes, went to a draw with Cody. You knew he was going to be a big deal in the future, but this has cemented him as a big deal today. Obviously, it looks like he's going off immediately to face Ethan Page and Scorpio Sky. Honestly, I think that it's fine to take the title off him now. He doesn't need the title to be relevant. He's shown that he has the fan base. He has people who will follow what he does. I don't know where he goes afterwards. Honestly, I would love to see him go against Sting. There was a moment, it was at the end of the match against Preston Vance, where I think Sting handed him the title, and you could see a little bit of fire in his eyes, and these two could have one hell of a feud. I'm not a big believer that Sting and Darby Allin's characters actually fit together based on who they are, beyond the fact that they've both got face paint. But it would be a hell of a feather in the cap of Darby Allin if he could have one big match with Sting, and potentially get a big win off Sting. That would be my long game for Darby Allin if I'm working towards it.
I wouldn't say no to that. Anthony, do you think it's been too quick for Darby Allin to lose the title here?
No, I think that's perfect time. He's broken Cody's record of defenses. It was getting to the point of that they started a few weeks ago feeding into the commentary of is his body taking too much damage, and that was a very similar thing with what happened before Cody lost his to Brody. So very similar things, very similar ideas that, you've defended it for so long, so much that now is the time. He's had the last few weeks has been a great run. I think, yes, he is white hot. He is a ratings draw, but you also got the other side, and this is something that I have seen online. A lot of people were saying, okay, he's winning, but, he's just winning, or, don't you think it's time for him to lose? It's just getting a little bit unbelievable. It's that jump the shark moment. If you continue it too long, it becomes too hard to get away from it. And you see that all the time with title reigns, where they just leave it on that person for just that little bit too long, and all of a sudden that person loses anything. So it seems like now what will most likely happen is we're going to get Darby and Sting versus Sky and Page. Most likely, that's what is being built, I believe. And Darby saying on Twitter as well, saying, I've got unfinished business with Page. He's obviously going to hold him responsible because of the stair incident, which, put him in this position where he was basically fighting a losing battle.
Yeah.
And that was because of that stair incident. So I believe that they're going to fight them. Don't know who's going to go over there because, they've already beaten Team Taz as a collective, and now they've got Sky and Page, a new signee and a person who's, gone from singles back to a tag team, but they're a new tag team pairing. So it's going to be very interesting to see who goes over there. But that's where I believe that they're going right this second. I wouldn't mind the idea of seeing Sting and Darby have a feud together, but at the moment, I'd be more keen to see Sting take some time off. I don't need to see him around with Darby right now. I don't need to see him every week. He's not bringing in anything apart from confusion to a lot of the matches. The other week he fought Luchasaurus for pretty much no reason at all, and it's a little bit confusing. It's time for him. His star power is every time he comes out, he's wasting that star power, and that's where that's a bit of concern that they've hired him and brought him in for the reason of bringing in that star power. But it feels like it's waned a lot because it's week after week, and I'd like to see him, not be there for a little bit and come back for something big. But yeah, at the moment, it's all Sting and Darby versus Paige and Scorpio Sky is the most likely direct direction they're going.
Speaking of jumping the shark, I want to move on to some of the non-match storyline points from Dynamite. We have the stats on the 3 title matches. They were all great. So again, go over to ProWrestlingMusings.com. You can check out all the statistics. That's what Craig put together. But obviously, there was a lot of stuff that happened outside of that on this absolutely insane show. The first thing I want to start with is Stadium Stampede. It's coming back. The Inner Circle taking on the Pinnacle. And obviously that segment featured the rehash of the Steve Austin pouring beer on the ring. It was Sammy Guevara shooting the ring with Bubbly. This one, I didn't love or hate this. I didn't really feel any way about this. Chris Jericho's great. He's always great. MJF is great. He's always great. I thought the promo from Ortiz, Hager, and Guevara earlier in the show, I thought that was fantastic. So that was all good. What was not good was Jericho coming back. I think they could have kept him off TV for a little while, even though he did have the brace. I feel like you could have just kept him off for a while. The segment went long. Tully's promo kind of got out of hand a little bit. And ultimately, the match we're going to get, I don't know why I really need this. I mean, I'm not going to say no. I think it's going to be fun. I think that they're going to not do so much of a kind of comedy. They're not going to do so many comedy elements the way they did in the original Stadium Stampede match. I think this is going to be a much more serious affair, as it should be, given the feud. But I just don't know why I need to see this. I just saw them go in this bloody, brutal blood and guts match. And now you're telling me in a month I'm going to see a different bloody and brutal match that's just called something else. Like, I'm sure it'll be great. Stadium Stampede last year was phenomenal. But I would have just preferred, as Anthony and I talked about on the podcast last week, I think it was last week, I would much rather see like MJF versus Guevara in a singles match. You know, something like that. I don't know why I need to see these teams go at it again. It feels very rushed. So I don't know what you guys think. That was my takeaway from it. So Sam, what did you think of this?
Look, rushed is the right word. The fact that Chris Jericho is coming back this week, even though he did have an arm brace on, is just insane given what they did. And they already, no matter what you think about the guts with how Jericho took the fall, that is a match that you want to have some sort of aura to it. Like this is not just a feud changing aura. This is a career changing aura, right. And they've robbed it. They've robbed it of some of its gravitas by following it up immediately with levity, following up immediately with a comedy segment. This should have been, and the way Chris Jericho talked about kicking off this feud with Stadium Stampede, he compared it to kicking off Appetite for Destruction with Welcome to the Jungle, the album by Guns N' Roses. So, we've still got to get to Paradise City. We've still got to get Sweet Child of Mine. There's still bangers left in this. We just kicked it off with a banger. But to do it so soon, as I said earlier, I feel like the schedule for AEW has been jammed up. And in the past, when they were in, sort of maybe a less rushed flow, that they would have done this thing over a couple of weeks. And you can have Jericho and Guevara if you really want, hosing the Pinnacle with a bit of the bubbly. That's a Chris Jericho. It seems like that's a Chris Jericho thing that he wants to do, and he wants to do this segment. But to have it so soon after Blood and Guts it's just, to me, it robs Blood and Guts of its of what that match is meant to be and what AEW want it to be. Like, they bled buckets in that ring. They wanted to put this match over as something intense and serious, and they've gone and cut it off at the knees straight afterwards. Yeah. Regardless of what you think of the fall that Chris Jericho took, this is an own goal as far as I'm concerned. This segment, I really wish it was something else.
I think that's a perfect analogy. I think it is an own goal. This is to use a baseball term. It's an unforced error, or tennis, I guess that would be. It's an unforced error. I don't think AEW needed to do this. I think this kind of thing would be better suited for All Out. I think what you could now the converse, you probably couldn't do Stadium Stampede at All Out because I think All Out is happening in Chicago, so you're probably not going to get Soldier Field to do Stadium Stampede. I imagine that would be very difficult to hook that up. So you probably couldn't do Stadium Stampede, but you could do something else. You didn't have to do this. This definitely feels like AEW saying we want blood and guts. We want another Stadium Stampede. Inner Circle and Pinnacle are the two big factions right now. The Elite doesn't have an actual faction to feud with. They just have Mox and Kingston. So let's put these two together and we'll shove them into these two matches we really want to happen. But it doesn't work. They didn't think about the fact that Blood and Guts happened so close to Double or Nothing that now you immediately have to start building for Stadium Stampede. I think a lot of people would say, well, you should have done Blood and Guts at Double or Nothing. To be fair to AEW, and I heard this from Brian Alvarez at Wrestling Observer, he said that they actually couldn't move the cage. The way that the cage was designed, they could not raise and lower it, so that's why they did it the way they did it at Blood and Guts. So that's probably the reason why that they can't do War Games at Double or Nothing unless it's, you can't do it unless you're going to put it in the stadium. So I think for AEW, what they should have done is they should have just said, let's rethink the way that we're going to book this thing. Do we have to do Stadium Stampede? Can we do a different stip match at All Out that is going to be loser disbands? And we can give it more time. So at Double or Nothing, can we do a singles match? Can we highlight a singles match? Or can we do a tag match? Because what we are going to get, probably, is not all of the singles and tag matches that we want. That's at least that's what it seems to be now. So we're not going to get Proud and Powerful versus FTR with this feud. We'll probably get it elsewhere, but not in this feud. We're not going to get MJF versus Jericho or MJF versus Guevara. And so it kind of feels like I would have rather seen those. I would have rather seen MJF, Guevara, or Wardlow, Hager. So it feels rushed, and I agree. It's kind of an unforced error. They didn't need to do this. But this is what they decided to do. So I don't know. I mean, Anthony, I can't bring myself to be passionate on one side or the other just because all the workers in this are great, but the story itself was not the that they're trying to tell. Anthony, when you look at this, are you excited for Stadium Stampede, or did they kind of kill your excitement for this match that ultimately was coming at some point?
Look, I agree with what Sam said. This is a step back. We had Blood and Guts, which was, as you both said, a massive build-up. Okay, they said, "Yep, this is a big thing," and I know Jericho did say on his own podcast that wasn't the end of the feud. Okay, which if you're having a match like that level, it should be. But cool. You want to continue the feud? Okay, go ahead. Now, Stadium Stampede, I believe should have been left because Stadium Stampede was a very special event. For me, it's one of my favorite events of the pandemic era because it was let's make people feel happy during a time when the world is just really bad with everyone, with COVID and that. It was still very fresh. This was basically a reward to us as fans to make us forget about the world for that match. And it was just fantastic, and I don't think that the match that they're going to have is going to represent what that match meant, and that will mean that it will tarnish the legacy that match could potentially hold. So for me, I'm not a fan. Couple little things that I want to mention, however. Jericho is legitimately injured. He is out for true. His arm is legitimately broken. So that fall, despite how dodgy it looked, it actually hurt him. So unless they do a lot of smoke and mirrors and hide the arm, I don't know if he can actually even fight in this Stadium Stampede 2. I imagine that they will because, it's Jericho and it's, loser has to break up stipulation. But then on the other side, Fozzy is going to be touring very soon as well. May 23rd, and then July. There's a couple dates including a couple Wednesdays, and then September as well. So, last time Fozzy was going to tour, he dropped the AEW title just beforehand.
That's right.
So, for me, Inner Circle has had its day. They're doing nothing. They've been spinning the heels for quite some time. If them putting over the Pinnacle is, them putting over the Pinnacle so the Pinnacle can be top guys, great, fantastic. Let's get it done.
Yeah.
They don't need to do it in Stadium Stampede. They should have just done, Blood and Guts, and then they could have just had Jericho versus MJF, at Double or Nothing. They don't need the Stadium Stampede. I believe it's a step back. I don't think it's needed. Whatever they do, whatever type of match they do, is not going to be the match that they did the first time. And I think it's going to hurt because our expectations will be a similar match to last time, and we're not going to get it, and it's going to hurt that type of match. And, MJF did say during the promo that it's not going to be silly, just touching on that, I believe that segment might have been a bit longer because Cassidy and Pac was actually meant to go to a 20-minute time limit.
Right. So they had to kind of add time. They've had to add places. Time.
So I wonder if this is where they've added that time. Yeah. I thought that they might have added some time to the Miro versus Darby match as well, which probably did. Yeah. But this would have been one of those segments where they could have, added that bit of extra time onto here to, get that, because that match finished obviously very suddenly. They didn't get the full 20 minutes. They had to make up time somewhere. Yeah. This is probably a perfect place for it because it was a big shindig that they could easily add a couple of extra minutes to. It definitely went too long. But yeah, for me, not excited. Don't care. It's just a rematch. And the issue that I've got with the card for Double or Nothing at the moment is that there's a few rematches that, very recent matches that we've seen before that we're now seeing again, and that can't be an ongoing issue.
Yeah, that's true. I think there's times where rematches are warranted, and I'm okay with it, especially if the original matches were great. As we get closer to Double or Nothing, I'm sure we'll talk a lot more about the card upcoming. I will say I believe that this particular situation is less about the match that we're getting now and more about establishing AEW's philosophy going forward. And what I mean by that is Jericho has said multiple times that he does not want these special stipulations that AEW are beginning to create. They have Stadium Stampede, they now have Blood and Guts, so these kind of special stip matches. He doesn't want it to become a WWE situation where you have, Hell in a Cell every December, so suddenly feuds are being put in Hell in a Cell. He wants, and AEW's philosophy is to have the feuds warrant the matches, not the other way around. So, to be fair to them, in this particular situation, I didn't see Stadium Stampede coming. And it feels warranted just in terms of, if you think about, if you took away the timing and you just said these two teams will fight in a Stadium Stampede match, it makes sense given the gravity of the situation and what we know about Stadium Stampede. Now, they're going to have to change the attitude. It can't be a comedy-style match. Not to say that Stadium Stampede was a full-on comedy match. There was a lot of serious stuff in it. But they can't have spots like that. It has to be a very serious match. But just in terms of what we know about the stip, it does make sense. So I think AEW has said, look, it's going to feel rushed. The match that we're going to get is probably not going to be on the level of what it was last year. But we are establishing that these matches, the feuds, are going to dictate the matches. This feud needs Stadium Stampede, the way that this feud needed Blood and Guts, the same way that the Elite versus the Inner Circle last year was going to need Blood and Guts. It's the exact same thing. So AEW going forward wants to say, look, you're not going to remember that this match didn't live up to the expectations set by the original, looking back in 5 or 10 years. Maybe it'll show up on one of those listicle YouTube videos or whatever. But you as a fan are not going to remember that. But we as a company are going to have this philosophy about how we do these major stip matches, what they look like, and why they're needed. We as a company are going to have that philosophy. So this existing in the wider range of putting over that philosophy and making that philosophy known. That's total speculation on my part, but I feel like that might be AEW's thought process here with this one. We get to move on now to my absolute favorite part of any podcast that we ever do, and that is, of course, talking about Anthony Ogogo. In this particular show, obviously he was not present, but the segment that he was involved in, or at least that his name came up in, obviously stirred the pot a little bit on social media and whatever else. And I want to preface this. We will talk about this because this is a podcast about AEW Dynamite. This did happen, so we will talk about this. But I want to preface this, talk about this segment by saying this. Cody's promo, I don't care that it was divisive on social media. It doesn't matter to me at all. The reality is that people are going to have their opinions about it. I personally loved it. A lot of people didn't, and we're going to talk about that. But you on social media, if you didn't like it and you took to Twitter, fine. That doesn't matter to me. You can have whatever opinion you want. I will bring up the ratings to say this. I didn't look at the ratings very much. I don't care. But in terms of if we're going to try to look at this objectively, and people will say, well, this was objectively bad. You can't do promos like this. In terms of the ratings, it made no difference. The viewers went up after the segment. It doesn't matter. Whatever you think about this promo, think it. Like, it doesn't matter to me, and I'm sure to Sam and Anthony it doesn't matter either. Think what you're going to think about this promo. But I'm not going to get into, people hated it on social media or whatever. Doesn't matter. For me, this promo, I thought it was phenomenal. I loved every second. I thought it was so for me as a proud American, this really spoke to me. I thought it was so good. And the thing about Ogogo, yeah, look, he's a heel. I mean, he literally draped the British flag over Cody's body last week. So, of course, Cody is going to, react in the same way that anyone would if you have someone who is overtly, insulting your country the way that Ogogo has. So, to me, the promo made sense. It wasn't out of left field. Cody's, obviously, his lineage is as a proud American. His dad, that was his gimmick. Cody has an American flag design tattooed on his neck. So, it makes sense. I don't think it's out of left field. I loved it. It spoke to me as an American. We obviously have two people on this podcast who are not American, so they're going to have a much different read on this promo. But I think from Cody's perspective, I thought it was great. From Ogogo's perspective, you're putting this guy over as a monster. Cody is clearly wary of him, if not downright afraid of Ogogo and the power that he brings. Which for me, as an Ogogo fan, as an Ogogo mark, you would say, love it, love to see it, put Ogogo over. As for the match of Double or Nothing, it's tough for me because after this promo, I do not want to see Cody lose because of how emotional the promo made me, but I love Anthony Ogogo. That didn't stop just because this promo was great, so I don't want to see Anthony lose either. So this puts me in a really tough position. AEW really screwed me over on this one. Because now I don't know who I want to win, and I'm going to be sad and happy either way. But that's my 2 cents on this promo. So I will turn it over to Sam first to talk about this whole segment and story that we're going to get here with Cody and Anthony Ogogo.
Yeah, look, I did not like this one bit. This is... Yeah, look, to preface it, look, I'm not, as we've already said, I'm not American, and patriotism hits very differently in Australia than it does in the United States. Australia, and Anthony will probably back me up in this. Just typically, we're not as overtly patriotic. We are very proud of our country. Most Australians are, but it's displayed in a very different way to the more overt and very emotional and very in your face way that Americans the stereotypical American way that it is. There's a saying called flag shagging that is a bit kind of something that gets thrown around a bit. So look, the patriotic stuff just did not hit for me. This is, I don't think this is the kind of thing that you can really do in wrestling in the year 2021. Like, it's not the 1990s anymore. It's not the 1980s anymore. Cody talked about a number of things in this. Like, he spoke about race relations in this, and he spoke about how, he was proud that his daughter was going to be able to grow up proud of being both black and white. And, that's great for her that she is able to grow up in this really privileged position. But unfortunately, there's a massive amount of black and white kids in America who grow up in extreme disadvantage, and that's a direct relationship to the inherent racism that is in American history. And that has never been more evident than in 2020, 2021. And to go and preach the way that, and that's what it felt like to me from Cody. And I'm normally a fan of the big match Cody promo. I've one of my favorite promos in Dynamite history is when he did the Ellis Island promo, and he welled up. But this was the first time I've ever agreed with the takes that everything feels artificial with Cody. And he welled up, and he looked up to the top left, and he looked like he was about to cry, and his lips trembled, but it all felt so artificial and put onto me, and it did not feel genuine. It did not hit for me. And the things that he was saying to me were just the kinds of things that I thought wrestling was past, and the kinds of things that I don't think hit the same as they once did. As I said, I'm not American, so it doesn't hit for me the same as it does Americans. But I'm sure there's lots of Americans there who went, that's great that, you've been able to live this really great life because your dad was rich and your parents were rich, and your daughter's going to live this great life because her parents were rich. But, I'm growing up in poverty, and one of the main reasons that I'm growing up in poverty is because in the past, my race was not allowed to buy houses in this part of in the rich parts, and the schools in my area that I'm zoned to are crap because they don't get funding, and my parents can't afford to send me somewhere else. Look, I'll stop it there because I'm verging on preaching as well, but this just did not hit on any note for me. And it's weird because normally I'm a big fan of the Cody big match promo, and that's what he was trying to do.
The one thing I absolutely do not want is to get into politics at all. I'm not going to argue with any of your points. I'm not even remotely interested on a show about wrestling. I love my wrestling. I love watching wrestling. I love talking
He
about
brought it
wrestling.
up though. Like Cody's the one that brought this up.
What I mean to say is all of that is to say that I don't need or want a lecture on politics in America from my wrestling. So I think Cody, he at the beginning of the promo, the very first words he said was, "This isn't fashionable to do anymore. It's controversial to do this now." So he comes out and says, "I understand that a lot of people don't want this to happen anymore." And I think what it was him taking a risk and saying, you know what, being patriotic, it should not be a political game. And whether that risk paid off for you personally is obviously personal to each person. So I'm not going to tell you, to you, Sam, specifically, or to anyone who might be listening, that this didn't pay off and it didn't work. I'm not going to tell you that it should have, because it's totally personal. There are lots of promos that paid off for a lot of people that do not work for me, for a variety of different reasons. All I will say is, whether it worked for you or not, what we should acknowledge is that Cody took a risk here. He came out and overtly said that there are going to be people that don't like this, and don't agree with what I'm doing. And so in a day and age where on this very show, we saw a segment that was invented in 99, was it, when Steve Austin did the beer truck thing? Or 98? So a segment that was invented like 23 years ago or something. we saw a rehash of that on this show, that Cody comes out and says, I'm going to take a risk. I'm going to do something that hasn't been done in wrestling since the 1990s, or I guess if you count John Cena, since the 2000s. I think that risk taking is what I want to see in wrestling. You can't do it all the time. You can't have a 2-hour Dynamite of entirely risk taking, because they might all miss and then we have a terrible show. But in this particular instance, he took a risk, and I think that whether it worked for you or not, we should at least encourage people to take risks that will broaden the spectrum of what we're seeing in our wrestling. You know, I mean, Stadium Stampede, Blood and Guts, these things are all risks. AEW itself was a risk taken by Cody Rhodes and all of these other people. So I think that's the philosophy here. So I don't want to litigate whether it worked for you or not. It's a very personal thing. And so I'm not going to tell you you're wrong. Certainly I'm not going to tell you you're wrong for that. But I'm really glad that you share a much different opinion than I have on it. That's why we do what we do. So I'm really glad that you bring that up. Anthony, you are also, of course, from the beautiful land down under, which I actually have never visited. I've just seen pictures, and I know it's really, really pretty. So I'd like to visit sometime. But I would be remiss if I didn't give you a chance to also talk about this particular segment. And it doesn't just have to be about the promo. If you want to talk about the whole story involved, because God knows I did, talking about a go-go in the factory. But please, if you would, talk about this segment, your thoughts.
Yeah, in regards to the promo, I will not be touching that with a 10-foot pole. I have thoughts, and you can read my thoughts on it on Pro Wrestling Musings Dynamite Roundtable, where I have written such thoughts. So if you want my opinion in regards to the specifics of the promo, I've written it on that document, which I believe is going to go live very, very soon. So by the time you've listened to this, so finish listening to this, then go read that on the Pro Wrestling Musings website. So
if you would put this on again and then read that while this is going in the background, just do that for me.
So yeah, just basically pause this right now, go read my things on it, and just think that I said that, okay? What I will touch on, and I love the invitation to touch on the storyline, because that's what I want to talk about. This storyline of Big Bad Brit versus Holy American Warrior is not worth it. It does not work at all.
The heel turn continues here, Anthony.
Let's start, okay? This factory, it started out as a betrayal of Cody by being betrayed by his closest friend, because he didn't think that he was being given enough time and energy. These guys, including the Go-Go, have sided with him because they all felt that they were gonna they weren't getting what they needed from Cody. They thought that what's his name? QT was the way forward, that they were going to get more by siding with QT. There have been multiple matches in regards to this, including the match most recently before this, where Cody did beat QT, and then he got punched and dragged. Outside of that, that should be the feud. The feud should be that you are on the side of the betrayers. You are on the side that injured me and left me broken down the bottom of a step with my head being squished on and only saved by Red Velvet. It should have nothing, and it has done nothing apart from being draped by a flag. Now, Ogogo, he is very proud to be UK. So in this match, it's now okay, you've got a proud UK person versus a proud American, both fighting, but now Cody has made it so much more. I'm super proud, and he's now taken on his dad's moniker of the American Dream.
Right.
This feud that started off with the QT heel turn and the betrayal has not done enough to sell a point of being now it being a battle between the Brits and the Americans. It has not. There's nothing apart from that. There's been a few things that Ogogo has said, which is nothing horrible. He hasn't said anything too overly crazy. He's done nothing too overly crazy to attack Cody or America directly, apart from after he punched him, he put the flag over him.
I wanna push back on this. I want you to finish what you're saying, but I want to say one quick thing. It wasn't just the flag. I mean, if you remember the very first words that Ogogo said on AEW that wasn't part of commentary was actually saying what I think was a great line, was saying, "This isn't Great Britain, this is shitty America." I had no problem with that line. I thought it was great. I laughed. I thought it was fantastic. But there has been more to happen to kind of play up the U.S. versus Great Britain kind of thing that Ogogo has been. It wasn't just the one action, but that's the only thing I'll push back on. Please continue.
Yeah, no, fair enough. But then again, why is this? If Cody felt so strongly about it, why is this the first time he's brought this up? This feud. The thing is that this feud is now too complicated. Okay, it does not need to be, and this is my point. It does not need to be Brits versus UK. It needs to be about the actual storyline that they have started. The entire reason that the factory exists is because they believe that Cody was taking too much time for himself and not allowing those underneath him to have the spotlight that they think that they deserve. Yeah. That is the storyline here, and that storyline has not ended. It has not been finished. That is the storyline, and that is the feud that they should be having, not the Britain of America. That's my point. That this feud has basically gone from a betrayal from QT and his followers, now to an international battle between a hot-headed UK and a hot-headed American. That's it does not work very well, and that's my issue with it. And yeah, I've got, like I said, I have thoughts about the promo. You can go read them. But yeah, look, I understand that, and I know that there has been a little bit of extra here and there, but has there been anything that has been said or done that warrants the type of promo that Cody punched? Me as a fan and someone who has followed this storyline, specifically to discuss this storyline with you, Griff, is that I don't think so. I don't feel that this feud needed to go here. I don't think that this is the reward or the send-off. And my main issue is that after cutting that promo, after putting on his dad's last name, there's no way that Cody's going to lose. And I honestly was hoping that he would lose and give it to Ogogo. After saying the things that he said and all that, and if he lost, he'd be basically failing America at this point. And that's also a huge issue because, he'd be failing his dad's last name. Ogogo is a future star. I will 100% guarantee that. I will say that. And I pointed you towards this. They do a show called Outside of the Ring. He was fantastic in it. Not as good as Platinum Max, but he was fantastic. Okay.
Solid second place.
Solid second place. Okay. Or shared second with Abaddon. She did a good job. Anyway, he did a really good job, and I feel that he is marked for a really good spot. And beating Cody in a one-on-one match would put a rocket on him and propel him, and that would be awesome to see. However, he's now in a position where I don't think he can win, because if he does, great, but I don't think he can, especially with so much now on the line that Cody has basically put on himself.
That is absolutely 100% fair, and it's a perfectly good argument. And I don't even entirely disagree with you, actually. As much as I did love this promo, and as much as I do love the idea of two very patriotic men from different countries, doing battle in a setting like this, I can't disagree with you that it doesn't seem to really match the story that they have been telling with the entire factory. So I think you're spot on there. Now I want to ask you this. Let's play a scenario here where in 4 months Ogogo and Cody are fighting again, and now the story is entirely about the factory betraying Cody, and Cody was just, all these things that we know the story is built on. If that is to happen again in 4 months at, All Out or something like that, would you look back at this story in a more favorable light if that were to happen down the line?
No, absolutely not. Because, like I said, it feels very messy now. And if they I think that if they go backwards to that betrayal story, it's now a step backwards, because you're going nation versus nation. That's the peak. And look, I'm 100% on board for two people who are very much in love with their countries fighting it out, in a manner. That's what wrestling's built on. We've seen that time and time again, and it's a great thing to be seen. If done well and handled well, that could work. This feud is not that. And if they went back and continued this feud after this match, because I believe that this was all about getting a Go-Go over.
Yeah.
He's the $1 Million Man. You called it at the start. I said that it was camaraderie, but you said no. You believed it was a Go-Go. So you got that there. That was a really good pick. Okay, but if they went from nation versus nation back down to that betrayal storyline over a 4-month period, I would feel that it was a step back, and it's muddying the story. And it's an issue that I call out on WWE all the time. I call out AEW. I call out Impact. We have to be fair with what we call out.
Yep.
If this was something that WWE was doing, we would be calling it out. And that's where I stand, that it is if they did it and went from built it up to nation versus nation. If they did this match with the story of the brotherhood, of the betrayal, I'd be all in for it. And then over the next 4 months, built a one-on-one with a Go-Go versus Cody, and did more of that disrespect and built it up as that nation, I'd be all in for it. Okay. Perfect. But it's too rushed. And this is something that Sam said earlier. It's just too rushed. It's too fast, and it's too much. It is just too much at once. Yeah. And there's too many points that Cody made that did not gel with me. Now, I like Sam, I'm non-American. And I saw it on social media. I saw it was very divided. I saw a lot of people that were like, this was a fantastic promo. I love Cody. Hell, this promo, Cody was picked up by a number of the Democrat politicians, saying a line after this promo. So, he's being picked up and being spread out and getting a lot of attention, which is great. But does this all call, like you said at the start, people are going to like it, people are going to dislike it. I'm not here to discuss that, because everyone is going to like and dislike what they want. However, what I am going to say is, does this make sense? In my mind, no.
I think you've convinced me with this one. I did not have a lot of thoughts about the storyline itself. I actually didn't consider very much about the general storyline. I was more thinking about the promo, and it's because I was doing exactly what I said I wasn't going to do, knowing that there was all these people on social media that, had these different reactions to it. And I mean, we all know how it is. You see people that, viscerally hated something that you really liked, and you kind of, that's what you start to think about. But I had not considered the storyline as a whole, and honestly, I think you're absolutely right. I think that this story would have a place, and I think that Ogogo's character work has been phenomenal. I think this Cody promo, not going to relitigate it, but it does set up this whole, UK versus USA storyline. But is that the storyline that we actually needed with these characters? And I actually agree with you. I don't think it is. I think that what I wanted to see, I want to see ultimately Anthony Ogogo go over. As much as I loved this promo from Cody, Ogogo needs to be the one that goes over here. He just has to be. And I have been the one that's been very critical of the way that Cody's been booked, the way that he wrestles. You can go over to the Pro Wrestling Musings YouTube channel right now. I did a whole video about it. And so Ogogo does need to go over here. But I agree with you. There's a concern that because of the way that Cody cut this promo, because of what he did, there's now going to be it definitely seems like he's going to be the favorite in this match, because how does he lose? Now, I will say AEW subverts expectations a lot, so it's very possible that they do something here, and maybe to go to Sam's point of, this isn't something we see in wrestling anymore. Well, maybe this promo is something we start to see more, but what we've seen through the 80s and 90s is that if you cut a promo like this, you don't lose. Not if you're fighting in the US. You don't cut this kind of promo and lose. Maybe AEW says, you know what, you can cut that promo, but you will still lose, even if you do it. So maybe that's their kind of modern take on doing a promo like this. Just speculation. But no, I do agree with you. I do feel like I want to see a go over, and it does feel like they're kind of moving away from the initial story that they were telling me about, betrayal of Cody and this hatred of Cody because of, how famous he is and how much time he takes away from people like Ogogo and Camarado and Solo. And that seemed to be the story. And now, even though I think the character work's been great, we're not going to get a resolution of this story. Now, my one devil's advocate point is to go back to something I said earlier, that AEW may be taking the very long-range view of this to say that in 2 years, Anthony Ogogo could be our world champion, and no one's going to remember this promo in 2 years. But if we start building the character now that Ogogo is a proud British patriot, he's a heel, and I want to point this out as well. He's not a heel because he's British. He's a heel and he's British. That's a very important distinction. He's a bad guy, but he also happens to be a British patriot. Now, if AEW's goal is we're going to build his character now, that's a character from moment one. And in 2 years, he's going to be a world champion, and we've seen this character grow and develop over 2 years. That's the goal here. I don't agree with him. I think I like the idea of looking into the future, but I do think you also have to look in the here and now, and you have to sell pay-per-views right now. Anything could happen in 2 years. So I think you got to do numbers now. And I think that, is this going to make people not buy Double or Nothing? No, I think anyone who's going to buy Double or Nothing now is going to still buy it. No one's going to boycott it because they didn't like this promo or whatever the case may be. Is it going to bring in new people to buy Double or Nothing? I don't know. I'm not qualified to say, to be honest with you. So, Sam, I will give you the last word on this one if you have one.
Yeah, look, all I'll say is Cody is the right man to do this. As much as I didn't like the promo, Cody's the right guy to go against Ogogo. You look at how he nurtured Shaq through that match. Ogogo is as green as grass. It's going to be an interesting thing to see him lock up. But Cody is the perfect person to put him through this and take him through this match and then get something out of him. I'm looking forward to seeing what they come up with in the actual match. I don't think it matters even if Cody wins. It's not going to kill Ogogo. This is just a starting point for Ogogo's character. This is not the end point. He's got years and years left in this company and years and years to be built up. So even if Cody does win, it's not the end of the world for him. But Cody is the right man to introduce him to us as a wrestler.
That is a fantastic point. Thank you so much for bringing it up. So the last thing we'll talk about here, we're not going to get to the further discussion of Mox and Nagata the way I had wanted to, but we talked a whole lot about Cody and Ogogo, which
talk about a heel turn.
Maybe we can find somewhere else for that. There's lots of spaces that we can talk more, but I'm glad we had that discussion about Cody and Ogogo, because I do think that our discussion here was a lot more nuanced and a lot more, I don't want to say intelligent, but certainly a lot more thoughtful than a lot of what you're going to see on Twitter and social media. So I want to thank both of you guys for that, by the way.
15 words.
Yeah, exactly. So I want to thank both of you guys for giving me an excellent discussion and presenting me with new things to think about. This is why I love doing this show and talking to you guys that have all these different views. So the last thing, what I want to end with, is talking about Double or Nothing, and the eventual main event that we're going to get there is going to be Kenny Omega versus Orange Cassidy versus Pac. It's going to be, I believe, the first ever 3-way match for a title in AEW. And I think the first 3-way match since Darby Allin, Jimmy Havoc, and Joey Janela, like 2 years ago in that hardcore match, I think. This obviously was the plan the whole time. If you've been following wrestling, if you've been following kind of the dirt sheets and the reporting about this at all, you know that this was the plan the whole time, but it was supposed to be a 20-minute draw between Pac and Cassidy. Cassidy got injured, so they changed the finish. They had Omega come out, beat or clock Pac with the belt on the back of the head, got a double down and a double count out. So it was different. The finish was different, but the result is the same. We're going to get this triple threat. So assuming that Cassidy is healthy, which it appears that he is, that's going to be our main event. And I'm not as excited about this as I figured I would be, only because I'm stuck on the fact that Brian Cage was not even involved at all. Like, they make this huge deal of Brian Cage beating the number one contender and saying, Brian Cage, he beat Hangman, he beat the number one guy. This is huge. This is huge for Team Taz. And then nothing. Like, he doesn't even get a chance to become the true number one contender for the pay-per-view, which I didn't like, because then it's like, why the hell do you have these rankings then? Like, if they're not going to mean anything, then don't have them. So I didn't like that. And I don't know. I mean, Pac and Omega, they're phenomenal. We've seen their matches. They're great. Pac and Cassidy had a great match 18 months ago, or whenever that was, that I loved. But I don't know. I mean, you put these three guys, like, it's going to be good. It's probably going to be great. Does it have me excited, like, take my money right now kind of excited, the way that I am for Cody and Ogogo? No, not really. So I don't know. Maybe that's just me, Anthony. Are you, like, absolutely thrilled to see this match right now?
No, absolutely not. So my biggest thing, okay, is that the AEW World Championship isn't really defended. It is the A title. It's obviously the most important title. They have said that it is in canon that it is that, okay? When you're going to a world title match, I'd like to believe that anyone can win. And this is back to Sam's point earlier, that this has all been rushed. Cassidy has only had 1 week side-by-side with Kenny. They've now had this match, and look, I'm not going to touch on the match because obviously it was marred. If we got that 20-minute time limit draw, it would have been much better, but still the points are going to remain that. We've only had 1 week. We're now going into a triple threat match, and if I ask both of you, or anyone, who's going to win this match, everyone's just going to say Kenny.
Yeah.
And so basically what they're selling us on is not the potential championship being lost. It's a good match, and we can see that for free on AEW any day of the week. And this is something that's looking at this card. We've got Hangman Page versus Brian Cage. We just saw that a few weeks ago. Now, yes, it is going to be a little bit different because they want a one-on-one match, but there's no stakes to it. There's nothing to it. What I think that they should be doing is adding stakes. So if Brian turned around and said, okay, I will face you, but if I beat you, you can't be in the rankings for 1 to 2 months. You're out of the rankings for 1 to 2 months. That's the price of a rematch because I've beaten you. I don't need to prove myself again.
Now, I will say this, though. If that was the stip, AEW just showed us that these rankings mean nothing because Brian Cage just beat the number one guy, and Cage doesn't get anywhere near the world title. So then, what would stop Page from saying, you know what, who the hell cares? I'll just enter into Casino Battle Royale or something and earn number one contendership that way.
That's also another point that I was just about to make, that, the Casino Battle Royale is giving people outside the rankings. That's fine. I'm fine with that. You got things like Money in the Bank and that allow that in other companies. I'm fine with that. That's fine, because it can give other people a chance. But, add some stipulations. But at the end of the day, your main event is going to be the AEW World Championship, and Kenny's not losing that. Okay? No one would believe that Kenny's losing that, and that fails at a single first test of believability. Do you believe that the championship's going to change? No. So what are you selling me on? Okay, you're selling me on the fact that you're going to get a good match. I believe it's going to be a good match. It'll probably be a phenomenal match. All three are great workers. All three can wrestle really good. So it's going to be a good match. But is Kenny going to lose? No. So you're selling me on a good match that I can see on any night of that AEW. Then we've got your women's championship match. Everyone's pretty much thinking that Baker's gonna win. Well, at this point, she's got to win. Okay, so we've got Kenny. We already know that outcome. We've got Sheeta. We know that outcome. I don't know the outcome of the tag team championship match. I'd like to think Eddie and Moxley win it, but it could go either way. Cody Rhodes versus the Go-Go. We don't really know. Hangman Page versus Brian Cage. I'd probably be expecting Hangman to get his win back there, but that one's a 50-50. But we've got two championships, two very important championships. Well, one more important than the other. And we know the outcomes for them. We've got a rematch that we've just seen a few weeks ago. I'm not very excited. They've done nothing to really make me excited for these matches, and that's the issue of this, that they've just sped things along too quickly, and that just goes back to Sam's point at the very start of this, that this all feels a little bit too rushed, and I've brought that up a few times, and it's just stands still that they've just failed that very first test of the championship of who's going to win it, Kenny. So why am I gonna buy the pay-per-view?
Yeah,
that's not selling me. The match between him and Moxley with the electric barbed wire, I bought that for the spectacle. Mm-hmm. Cool. I was sure that Kenny was going to win, but there was an added element to it that I'd never seen. That was what sold me. The other issue they've got is we have WrestleMania Backlash, I think this weekend.
Yeah.
Or next weekend.
This weekend.
We have got two triple threat matches in that. With Reigns, we've got Bobby Lashley, Drew McIntyre, and
Braun
Strowman, and then you've got Rhea, Asuka, and Charlotte. You've got two triple threat matches. Then we're going to have this triple threat match after it. Is that going to be too many triple threat matches or for championships one after another? Is it going to take a little bit out? It's no fault of AEW's. As you said, AEW hardly ever does triple threats, and it is just really, really bad timing. But unfortunately, there is a wider wrestling world out there, and we have to look at it all. Is those other triple threat matches going to be compared to this triple threat match, and are they going to take anything out of it? Probably.
So because AEW really does so few triple threats, it feels like the feud it's the same thing we talked about earlier. The feud that would be needed to warrant something like this, I feel like, should be huge, because they never do it. So to me, it kind of feels like it's a little bit limp, honestly, to say, this is a match that we never, ever, ever do, and we've never done it for a title. And why are we doing it now? Just because, two guys fought in a number one contenders match and we didn't get a finish. It's not like this is, happening days before the pay-per-view. We got weeks to go. Why don't you just rematch it next week? You know what I mean? Like, they haven't given me an explanation for why this needs to happen, other than, well, we didn't get a finish in this number one contenders match. Well, then just redo it. They've done it before. So just redo the match. It just feels like, again, this is a common theme that kind of comes up. We went from AEW kind of, they booked themselves into a corner. They started with the end. They started with, we want a triple threat between Pac, Orange Cassidy, and Kenny. And you know what? Fine. The match will probably be phenomenal, as we've said. But then they kind of just work backwards. And a lot of times that's great, and that's what you should be doing. But sometimes it does mean that, if the execution isn't there, then you do kind of end up with this. It's kind of like, I'm so glad you articulated it the way you did. It's much better than I could. Because it doesn't feel like a pay-per-view main event world title match. Not like exploding barbed wire death match. Not even like, Winter is Coming was not a pay-per-view, But the main event was Omega versus Moxley, where going into that match, you definitely felt like either man could win here. So, now we go from those two, blood and guts, to now this, where it's like, yeah, I mean, Kenny's going to win, and the only reason it's happening is just because Omega, hit some dude over the head with a belt, and, now we get this match. It doesn't feel like it warrants the kind of match that we're going to see for it. So, Sam Anthony's brought me down here on my opinion of this match. So, is there any chance that you're more excited than the two of us?
I'm sitting here stewing, Griff. Look, I just fundamentally disagree with just about everything Anthony said, to be honest.
You know what? I'm so glad you do. Thank you.
I think I think the idea that there has to be a chance, there has to be an even chance for a title match on pay-per-view. I think that's really misguided. You look at Mox's reign last year; it was one of the best face reigns in the last 10. I actually wrote a column saying this is the best face championship run we've had in the last 10 years. There were 2 pay-per-view matches. There were probably 3 out of the pay-per-view matches that he had against Brody Lee, against MJF, against Eddie Kingston, that to varying degrees, there was no way he was going to lose any of those. There was very little suspense in terms of who was going to win. It was more just a chance of, how was it going to go through? Yeah. Even looking beyond AEW, like I look at the amazing reign of Kazuchika Okada. He had a match against Bad Luck Fale. There was no way Fale was going to win the IWGP Heavyweight Championship. He had a match against someone who wasn't in New Japan. There was no way that every reign has every big great reign has these matches where the winner going into it, but that's not the point. The point is that there's a match that needs to be sold. In terms of how it's come to it, obviously this match on Dynamite this week was snake bit, and I do agree that it's sort of the rushing. I think it affects this one less than it's affected, say, the Inner Circle feud that I was talking about. I think it's affecting this a lot less. The reason for this is these two are the reason that Brian Cage didn't get into, even though he beat Adam Page. The reason is because he hasn't actually won that many singles matches. That was his first major singles match. So maybe down the line, yeah, he will. But Pac and Orange Cassidy are the 2 most winningest. Now that Adam Page got beat, they're the 2 singles wrestlers with the most wins. That makes perfect sense that these guys would be the people that did it. Now, a lot of that was shenanigans on Dark. Sure, that's a different conversation.
Yeah, it is something different
I
entirely.
I'm somewhat sympathetic to where do these wins come from? Oh, they happened on Dark. Don't worry about it. They popped up in the ticker if you're paying attention.
It's funny that you say that. It's funny that you say that while disagreeing with Anthony, who is an avid watcher of Dark, and we've talked about it before. So
yeah, these wins do in some ways materialize from nowhere, but it makes sense. And you know what? I actually do like the fact that this came from an interference from Kenny, because what happened was Kenny wanted to interfere. Kenny interfered in this match to create a no result. So the idea being, I don't need to wrestle. And it's like, right. Well, the hubris is now you've got to wrestle 2 people. And that's not the greatest. That's not the greatest booking thing. And I kind of rolled my eyes when it happened, but it makes sense, right? And look, This is going to be a fantastic match. I don't need to be sold on Pac versus Kenny. Anytime those 2 are in a ring, no matter who else is in it with them, that's going to be something that's worth paying for. And you add Orange Cassidy, and he is the perfect person to have in a triple threat match, because he could be like lying on the outside. He could just roll to the outside, just chill on the outside while Pac and Kenny rip each other to bits and inject himself. And I agree, it doesn't have the same feeling as the big one-on-one singles match, but I don't think it's as doom and gloom, and I definitely don't agree that there has to be a strong element of this title could be lost, because I would argue in Jon Moxley's case. The only match that I ever thought he was in danger of losing was the match against Kenny. Every other match, it was pretty much like, oh yeah, I don't think he's losing this one. And you'd probably put a 75% chance on Mox winning, if not more, in most of those matches that he had last year. And it was still a phenomenal championship reign. It's just the way it is. If you have a long reign, you're going to come up against people who aren't necessarily on the tippy top level. These two are not. I would love Pac to one day win the championship. I don't think it's probably ever going to happen. I don't think it's ever going to happen for OC either. But, this is still going to be worth it. It's still going to be a good match. And they've got time to build up and sell us on it. They've still got 2 weeks to sell us on it. This isn't happening next weekend.
I want to get meta here for a second. I love doing this show so much for this reason, because Anthony, talks for a long time and makes, I think, a lot of very salient, very good points that I agree with. And then, I respond to this. And now Sam comes on and makes entirely contrary, also very salient, also really great points that I also agree with. So I feel almost like a debate moderator here. Not that this is like a debate or anything, just, 2-3 people who watch a ton of wrestling. Score it. I'm not a no. I'm not well outside of being qualified to do something like that. But it goes to show you, this is what I think makes wrestling so much fun. Why we love doing this stuff, because it combines a sports element of the competitiveness and competition that you like watching with this artistic element that people, beauty's in the eye of the beholder, right? Everyone interprets what they see differently and has different preferences and likes different things. And, we just litigated, the whole Cody Rhodes promo, and we have 2 entirely different opinions on all of that. And so this is why I love doing this so much, because at Pro Wrestling Musings, we have such a diversity of opinion in terms of what people like and don't like and how we feel about certain things. So this is my pitch to say you should absolutely subscribe on YouTube or give us a review or whatever it is that you do. Just watch this every week, because you're always going to get something different from the people on. So, Anthony, I would be remiss if I give you an opportunity to respond to some of the arguments here that Sam has made as I play my debate moderator role here that I just said I wasn't going to do.
Yeah, Sam's just trying to attack me because he's worried that I'm going to steal wrestlers off of him in our fantasy league, and that's why he's deliberately taken his side against me.
I thought he was attacking you because he's taken the babyface role here, and you established last week that you're a heel now. So
exactly, yeah, there's that as well. So there's 2 reasons he's attacking me. Exactly, that's it. Look, in terms of why I say the believability, and I agree that Moxley had a great run and everything. The reason I think about the believability, about whether Kenny can drop it, is that when we're looking at the quality of Dynamite versus the quality of the pay-per-view that we're trying to be sold, at the beginning of AEW, Tony Khan clearly said that the pay-per-views were going to be the big thing, that they're going to have the 4 big ones, that they're going to be where the big payoffs are. Is this AEW championship match a pay-per-view worthy match? I agree. Pac and Kenny getting in a ring anytime is fantastic. With Orange Cassidy, I strongly think it is going to be a great match. Definitely will be. Is it pay-per-view worthy? Versus some of the stuff that we've seen on free-to-air? I don't really think so. And that's I think...
Let me hop in real quick and ask you to clarify here. It sounds like what you're saying and what I would say is the quality of the in-ring match itself is pay-per-view quality, but the quality of the storyline leading into it is not. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. Or even the type of match would probably be something that you could see on Dynamite. And, it could be something like it is. The quality level could be one of the 2, okay? It could be either. I'm not sure. I haven't seen the match. I'm sure when I come back afterwards, I'll clarify. But right now, we look at the story and I go, okay, the story is not really hitting The story, yes, it has a few weeks, but we're here. As to your point earlier, why not just have a rematch next week? Why do we have to do the triple threat? Make there be a reason for it. Obviously, I hope that they address it, that they build it. I would love, when it things. In terms of the believability, like I said, it's hard for me to explain, but when I look at those things of, you want to get behind a character, you want them to win, you want them to beat Kenny, you want someone to come in, like for that match with Eddie versus Mox. Everyone knew that Mox was going to win, but everyone was behind Eddie. They're like, yeah, come on, Eddie, you can do it. Or you may be the heel, but we're rooting for you because you deserve this. You deserve that championship win. So a lot of people were getting behind him, but can anyone get behind Pac and Orange for this? I don't know. It's definitely too early to tell. So initial thoughts of whether or not it's going to be good. It's definitely going to be good. Is the storyline going to carry it? We don't know yet because obviously none of us can tell the future. If we could, then we'd probably be putting bets on this and making a lot of money. But
I wouldn't be doing this if I could tell the future. I'll tell you that.
Exactly. So for me, I think it's just we will see. I have all the faith in AEW making it work because they've shown time and time again that they can make it work. But I do worry that one day they are just going to book themselves into a corner and not be able to deliver. And that's when, things are sort of, that's where you worry. And you get those comparisons because you see it all the time in WWE where they do book themselves into a corner and have to do a destruction finish, have to do something that doesn't make sense, something that loses the product that they've built. And that's my worry. I come across, cool, I don't like this, I don't like that, but it's actually, I love it. I love it, and I want it to be. I want it to be so good that everyone's just like, yeah, no, this is so great. This is just the best thing. I could talk about how much I really enjoy AEW. That I haven't missed an episode. That I'll watch it once or twice. Especially if I'm on the pod, I'll watch it again before I actually come on, so I remember half the stuff that happened. But it's very much a case of I really enjoy the product. I just want to make sure that it's pushing those boundaries that we believe it. When we look at the card for Double or Nothing, you go, okay, is the card better than what you see on a regular Dynamite? And at this moment, probably not. And that's something that has been brought up of AEW not pulling out the big cards. If you look at the previous card for, Revolution and all that, you had things like the big money match between Hangman Page and Matt Hardy, that could have been a Dynamite thing, they are delivering such a great episode of Dynamite every single week that the episodes are online with the pay-per-view. And I hear this comment a lot, that these are pay-per-view worthy cards. Speaking about pay-per-view worthy cards, do you know that Eddie Kingston and Jon Moxley are fighting the Acclaim next week? And it is going to be amazingly great because I hope that Eddie gets a promo, or Eddie and Mox get a promo first, and then they get a wrap at the end because, God, it's going to be God. Anyway, so yeah.
Eddie Kingston eats Max Caster's mic.
Yeah, it's going to be great. So yeah, look, I'm all in, but yeah, when you're looking at a pay-per-view, they have gone back to this whole, okay, you pay the extra money for this great pay-per-view, cool, great, but you have to make it worth it. And at the moment, the card isn't as good as some of the episodes of Dynamite that they've hit recently.
Anthony, I'm somewhat sympathetic to what you're saying there because they have changed their philosophy since they started Dynamite. When they kicked off Dynamite, they didn't stack their Dynamite wasn't as stacked as what it is now. In the last, particularly the last few months, they've had giant matches week after week. They've had really big matches on free to air TV. Starting with Winter is Coming, that was having Omega versus Moxley, that was like their biggest match they could possibly have.
Mhm.
You know, you've had the big women's match between the Lights Out match that was on Dynamite. Putting the Bucks versus SCU on Dynamite, Blood and Guts on Dynamite. Like they've really been stacking Dynamite. So you're not wrong there that you're putting on lots of cards that are on that level that you'd expect from pay-per-view.
Yeah. So I would ask you then, because I agree, Anthony makes a great point. I think it is a credit to AEW that Dynamite is so good every week. There's so many matches that are just
what a terrible
miss.
problem to have that we get all this amazing free content.
That's the question I want to ask you. That it almost feels like, we're looking at this going, oh, you're only doing Omega versus Pac versus Cassidy, like that's it. And I think if we hadn't been spoiled by what AEW's been doing match wise, we look at this and be like, just the fact that this match is happening at all, just that fact makes it a pay-per-view match. And I will compare it. I hate doing this, but I will compare it to WWE coming into WrestleMania in that Reigns versus Edge versus Bryan. A lot of people, a lot of the kind of, smart fans like us, the smarks like us, we're sitting here saying, well, this story hasn't been that good going into it. Is this a pay-per-view quality? But everyone knows that this is going to be a main event just because of look at the match it is, and relative to the quality of the shows on weekly TV leading into that, just because of the match it was, that became a pay-per-view main event. So I almost feel like AEW has hurt themselves in the minds of some fans. I don't know exactly how many, but certainly Anthony, I think, is not only speaking for himself. I think there are people out there that would agree with him. It's kind of hurt AEW to put on such high-quality shows because the match Omega versus Pac versus Cassidy, like it's not as special as it should be because we've gotten so much great stuff. So I agree. I mean, Sam, it's like, first world problems, right? I mean, it's like the best problem you could possibly have. But, I mean, all I want to know, all I will, just ask it as an open question, is AEW's strategy, has it shifted in a good way? Meaning, has AEW concluded that people like us will buy the pay-per-views because the show is so good? Has AEW basically said, back in the day, you used to buy pay-per-views because you wanted to see the pay-per-views. But we believe that now you buy the pay-per-views as almost a reward for putting on a great show weekly. That it almost is like, it doesn't matter what's on that card. If you are a loyal viewer of Dynamite, you will buy this card because we've worked so hard to ingratiate ourselves to you, to make you a loyal fan. I'm not saying that that's actually reality. I'm just wondering if that's a possibility that AEW's thought of.
Yeah, I think so. I think that, and also just the fact that TV revenue is a major income stream for wrestling, much more so than back in the pay-per-view era. TV revenue is a big income stream, so that's something they're going to. And look, I watch New Japan. That's my main two wrestling promotions I watch are AEW and New Japan. And look, I'll take the stacked Dynamites over a boring ass Road 2 show any day of the week. You give me the stacked Dynamites, please. I don't care. I'll still watch those big shows. I'll still pay for the pay-per-view, but give me the stacked Dynamites over those shows that are all 3-man, 6-man tags, please.
Well, it's a great point you make because, I personally am probably not the typical AEW fan, just because I do what I do. I spend so much of my time, either writing content or making videos or doing this podcast or whatever. So I come at it from a different way, and just my personality naturally, is different than I think your typical wrestling fan. So I do think that from me speaking personally, it doesn't matter whether I think the pay-per-view card is, pay-per-view worthy or something like that. Ultimately, AEW has earned my loyalty as a company. They have built up so much goodwill with me that we've talked about this multiple times on the podcast before, that it doesn't matter whether I think the stuff hasn't been quality from AEW. They have built enough trust in me that I believe it will be quality eventually. If I just give them enough time, if we give them enough patience, they have earned that with me. And so I'll buy the pay-per-view because I believe that, they'll pull a rabbit out of the hat with this one, that Stadium Stampede will be an 11-star match, that, Kenny, Pac, Cassidy, they're going to find a way to swerve me somehow. I believe that they will do that. Now, it's a double-edged sword, because even though I believe that now, if a year from now they're still doing this, I might not believe that anymore. If they give this same thing to me next year, I may not say, maybe they'll do something crazy with Omega, Cassidy, and Pac, or whoever it is at that time. And that's not speculation. That's literally what happened with WWE. Say what you want about it, and maybe you're listening to this and you really like that show. Either way, you can't help but, understand that a lot of people are very cynical when it comes to them. That when they give us something good, everyone says, how are they going to mess this up? Whereas AEW, when they give us something not good, everyone says, how are they going to fix this? And I think it's testament to AEW. I don't know if that's typical of a fan, though. Maybe that's just me. I don't know.
And there probably will be a drop-off this pay-per-view. I will let you talk, Anthony, don't worry. There probably will be a drop-off this pay-per-view in terms of buys. Revolution was like 167,000, I think, when they finalized the numbers, which was massive.
Yeah.
The other ones have all floated around the 100,000 mark. This will probably most definitely go down. And it's because, Kenny Omega versus John Moxley, that's the company's biggest match.
Yeah.
Like
exploding barbed wire death match as well. I mean, just the name of that match.
Yeah, and they gave it the hard sell. This is going to be down, and I'm sure they understand that as well.
Yeah.
Anthony, I'll let you jump in. Sorry I won't say anything further on this. I've said my piece.
Yeah, please, Anthony, go ahead.
See, true babyface, if I cut in, I wouldn't have said sorry. See, that's how you know the difference.
That's how you know Sam's the babyface on this one.
Yeah. All right, so, look, I'm looking at this... I agree that they are more focused on TV, which they have to be because they have to get the TV rights. That's their main form of income at the moment. The TV rights and then everything else after that. Okay, so these pay-per-views are just extra. So TV is their main function and their main focus, and that's understandable.
Yeah.
However, as what you said, if this is a continuing trend, that good faith might start eroding. There's already people who are like, look, I've given them a chance, but, I've gone out and bought certain things. And, how many people are not coming back because the exploding barbed wire ending, How many people are, coming back are not coming back because they look at the card and they go, I could just see that on TV. I'm not gonna bother.
Yeah.
Don't forget that there are literal podcast review shows that review about 10 minutes after the show that will tell you in an hour what you missed. We're one. We do it quite late after, but that's because that's what we do. We look at stats. We're a very different thing.
Right.
Where you have these shows, other
Better
shows.
is the word, Anthony.
Yeah.
That's the baby face I was looking for.
We have other shows that will go in depth and describe, this is the match, this is roughly what happened, this is the outcome, and that will happen. So, I see it on YouTube all the time because I do watch a number of these. The way at the moment, because I don't have time to watch Raw or SmackDown, but I do want to keep up to date because, I do want to watch the pay-per-views, or there's certain things I like, but the way that I keep up is by watching review shows.
Yep.
And, and seeing a lot of comments saying, I don't watch the show, I just watch these review shows because they're more entertaining, or I stopped watching it and I just watch you guys because it's easier for me. It's something that is always a risk, and it's something that, is, yes, they have good faith now, but how much the good faith that they've got, they need to be deliver. They need to deliver, and so at the end of the day, I know that I hope that will be a good show. It will. I'll be buying it anyway. So
all of us will be. So that's
I'll be watching
doubt.
it anyway. But there's people that won't be, and there will be the reasons that we've touched on, that a lot of other people have touched on. There is legitimate concerns about what is being provided now.
Yeah.
They have had an amazing, a massive TV run with some great episodes and some great wrestling, and they're being rewarded. They're being rewarded with it, with that increase in views. You know, the 900,000. You know, they're being rewarded with that, and that's fantastic. But you know, how long can that go on for when they're not rewarding you on the pay-per-views as well? I hope that they add another female match to the card, because currently they've only got one. Yeah. And I'd like to see another one. If they are wanting to calm down Dynamite a little bit more, you know, take out a couple of the big stuff and give more time to the women. You know, it's something that is missing, but that's a conversation for another time. But it is something, especially this week. So one last little complaint. It shouldn't have been Rosa. It should have been Sheeta this week doing the squash.
Yeah.
It should have been Sheeta doing the squash. She's the one. She is the champion. She needs to be on the show more regularly. She should have been the one doing the squash, not Rosa. You could have done that next week. You should have had the mirroring of the squashes. You could have had Britt last week. That's fine. And then do Sheeta this week. They did have a little tangling, but that was like an outside of... wasn't even... I don't even think that was on Dynamite. You know, it was mentioned.
Yeah. I mean, the interview with Britt was great. I mean, that was fantastic.
Yeah, it was great. But yeah, like, you know, they need to do more. And that's something, you know, Sheeta should have been there, not Rosa. But yeah, look, you know, it was a good show. I did enjoy it outside of the things, and look, most of what I say is nitpicking anyway. You know, but at the end of the day, you know, it's those little things that, you know, make the difference between a good show and a great show. And you know, I want it to be a great show.
Yeah, here's the thing. It's all relative, right? So it's all about the context that we talk about this. So, you know, there's a lot to say, and all of us have levied one criticism or another against all kinds of different things on this show. Ultimately, for the 2 hours that I watched, I was incredibly entertained. I never thought about turning it off. I never thought about, you know, doing something else. I loved watching it. I had a great experience watching it, and that's really what matters. So I agree with Anthony that, you know, these things, they could start to become a problem if they continue. But you could say that about anything, you know. So people talked about, like, when Sting came in, there was a lot of people saying, well, AEW, you know, the way they use their legends, or it was Big Show, I guess, when he came in, you know, the way they use their legends, it could become a problem, you know. Well, yeah, it could, but it's not. You know, so the way they book triple threats could become a problem. Yeah, but it's not right now, right? That's the point I want to make. These things are nitpicky, and it's relative. This is a great show. I enjoy watching it every week. I assume that you guys enjoy watching it every week. Otherwise, why the hell else would you be here? And I assume that if you have made it this far in the podcast, that you also enjoy watching it every week. Because as Anthony said, we're not a review show. We don't just tell you what happened. We actually go in depth and assume that you watch this stuff. So I assume that if you made it this far, you also enjoy it. So these are criticisms because we love wrestling and we spend, you know, copious amounts of time thinking about it, watching it, and analyzing it. So this is the result. But I still do love this show. I don't think that should be lost in the shuffle at all. Sam,
agreed,
please.
100%. Spend way too much time on wrestling. Watching AEW Dynamite's become an awesome Thursday night habit for me. So Wednesday night in America ends up while I'm at work on Thursdays. So my Thursday night habit is watching. Yeah.
I was going to say, me and Sam actually watch it roughly around the same time on Thursday nights.
I see. We always see one another tweeting, and I typically hit up Anthony and go, "What are you drinking tonight? What kind of whiskey have you got there?"
Fun with time zones, but it does become like a community thing. I mean, I have my friends that I watch it with in various Discord servers or whatever, and yeah, I mean, we watch it, and I think it's so easy to see people on social media that, you know, that don't like it, or it's become a thing now where people hate watch things. Like, they know they don't like it and they watch it anyway just so that they can bash it or say something about it. It's like, you know, it goes back to what I said earlier about talking about Cody. I think this is a view that everyone should take. I could not care any less about what other people have to say. I mean, when you really think about it, again, there's that natural reaction. If people don't like what you like, that natural reaction would be like, well, they have to like what I like. And I think this is something that I actually heard Brian Alvarez talk about as well when he was doing his show, that he said, you know, there's this idea that, you know, if you like it, then it's worth watching because you want to believe that you're a smart person. And so if everyone else likes what you like, then you are very smart because you've liked what the majority of the population like, right? So it annoys you when someone doesn't like the thing that you like. But ultimately, who the hell cares? If you watch Dynamite, it's because you like Dynamite. I love Dynamite. I love AEW. So I watch it because I like it. And if there's people out there that don't, then fine. I hope that they like something else. I hope that they like WWE. I don't personally, but I don't watch it. So you know, who cares? Like that's ultimately the message that I think is very important, that I think people should I don't want to say live by, but should just keep in mind that, you know, ultimately it's about what you like, and not about what anyone else likes. Because you wouldn't do this with food, right? I mean, you wouldn't. We have kind of, you know, joking arguments. Like, I don't know if you guys have this in Australia, but like in America, we have joking arguments about, you know, what's better, New York or Chicago style pizza. But no one like gets into full on, you know, Twitter fights and like yelling at each other and lobbing threats or whatever terrible stuff people do on Twitter about New York versus Chicago style pizza. Because, you know, there's like a joke level of tribalism, but like ultimately it's whatever pizza you like. If you don't like Chicago pizza, don't go to a Chicago pizza place. So I think wrestling is the same thing. If you don't like Dynamite, don't watch Dynamite. And, you know, if you like Dynamite and someone's talking shit or whatever, who cares? You know, I'll get off my soapbox now, but that's how I feel genuinely. So.
Look, I agree 100%. Look, it's one of the reasons I stopped writing about WWE in 2019, because for years I loved WWE and I got a lot out of it when a lot of people weren't getting a lot out of it. But it just did enough to break me in 2019, and I stopped writing about it because I wasn't enjoying it. I don't follow it anymore. I still like keep tabs on, you know, roughly on what some of the wrestlers I like are doing, and if I hear like something's good, then I might go and check it out. I watched WrestleMania; it was really fun, but you know, I don't keep up with it day to day because it doesn't make me happy, and I try not to get into the debates online about it because, you know, I don't have much good to say about it, and I don't want to be one of those people because it frustrates me no end sometimes seeing people, you know, taking shots at something that I enjoy and just seemingly their MO in life being to destroy the fun of others, which, you know, I never want to be that person. And we all know anyway that the answer to the debate of what pizza's better is whichever one has pineapple on it. So I'll leave it at that.
Talk about a heel turn. Jeez, they just swerved us all at the end of this show. That was so, Anthony.
And the story all along was that Sam was the heel the entire time.
Anthony, if you say
that's the show closing. That's the show closing angle right there.
All Anthony needs to say is that pineapple belongs nowhere near a pizza, and we've got like an Austin Hart WrestleMania 13 double turn going on right here.
I can't actually say that, but I can say that our
mega powers combine.
Yeah, our current argument is whether or not the VB, which is a type of beer, sucks. My position is that it sucks greatly, and I believe that Sam's position is very opposite to that.
So fun story. So VB is just a terrible beer. The reason that I enjoy it is because when I was at uni, my friend and we lived in a share house with like a bunch of other guys, and there were a bunch of other share houses nearby. So there was always people going around having drinks. Anyway, we got sick of people stealing our beer, and we decided, what's the beer that no one's ever going to steal? And so we started buying cases of VB. We learned to love it.
So
But part of the reason that we learned to love it was because it was so crap and no one would ever steal it.
So in America, we actually do have the same thing. It's called Pabst Blue Ribbon, PBR, and it's the exact same thing. I don't drink personally, but when I was in college, yeah, it was the exact same thing. People would just buy that so you wouldn't steal it. So I don't have an opinion because I don't drink, but thank you for contextualizing that. So for all of our Australian viewers, wherever you come down on that, that's like watching wrestling. And for you Americans out there, wherever you come down on New York versus Chicago pizza, just know that if you prefer New York pizza, you're wrong. And if you prefer pineapple on pizza, you're also wrong. I'm sorry. I have to I have to say that. So whether that's my heel or face turn, I'll let you decide. But
So
I think
we've done a whole big show thing. I think we've all turned each way multiple times during this.
No, it's like it's like '97 in the WWE, where if you're in Canada, if you're in America, you're Bret Hart. If you're in America, you're getting booed. If you're in Canada, you're getting cheered.
That's exactly right. It
all
reminds
depends
me
where
of
you live.
I'm thinking of I can't remember exactly what show it was, but when WCW did it, when Lance Storm was the Team Canada gimmick, and they went to Canada,
Yeah.
and he was doing his whole shtick, and everyone loved it, and all that. That's what this is. So if you like pineapple on pizza, or if you like, what did you guys call it? VB? Is that the beer?
Victoria Bitter. You should love that, Anthony. It's from your home state. I'm from New South Wales. I shouldn't be loving
I know.
VBs.
It is so bad.
Absolutely
so
no
bad.
loyalty to the local cuisine, I see. That's very disappointing. But I will say that I can counter that, because I come from Denver, Colorado, and you guys probably don't know this, but the classic specialty of my area is Rocky Mountain oysters, which, when you hear that, it's like, they're oysters. They're not. It's cow balls. That's what Rocky Mountain oysters is. That's that's the specialty of my area. So just be lucky that you have crappy
Delicious.
beer. There are countless stories about people not being from here, not knowing what they are, and locals will mess with them by saying that's the local specialty, you have to try it. And the funny part is, to some people, I mean, they taste good, as we keep saying, and taste is all relative. It's all different. So to some people, they taste good until they find out what it is. And then things change. And often those people don't talk to locals anymore after that. But the point is, wherever you come down on these different debates, we can all agree that you should go over to ProWrestlingMusings.com and check out the website, and you should subscribe to this podcast and subscribe to our YouTube channel. I'm sure we could all agree that that you should do that. So, as we conclude what I think has been just a phenomenal discussion here for the better part of the last 2.5 hours, I will kick it over first to Sam. Please tell the people where they can find you if they want more of this brilliant analysis and presumably analysis of why VB is actually really good and you should drink it.
I would not recommend anyone ever drink a VB. No way. There's 100 beers that are better than that one. Look, you could find my writings on WrestlingHeadlines.com. I haven't written at all really this year. I've been taking a break from writing. WrestlingHeadlines.com though is my home. Maybe popping up in different places around the traps in the next little while. But if you want to follow me on Twitter, Sir_Samuel is where you can find me. And yeah, look, I actually just wrote something today along with Anthony, me and some of the other guys at Wrestling Headlines, and we roped Anthony into it, doing it's called a draft, fantasy draft, where we are taking turns making picks and making rosters for wrestlers who were active during the 80s and 90s, and at the end of it all, we've got to make a card. Anthony's been doing quite well, even though it's his first time in a draft. So, if you go over to WrestlingHeadlines.com, you can see the results of that, the first 8 picks, and each person's rationale. It's very interesting, very enjoyable to be part of, and you can follow it on Twitter as well. So I'll give that a shout. Not to, come onto Pro Wrestling Musings podcast and start plugging another website too hard.
No, I will allow that because that sounds like the exact kind of nerdy nonsense that I am here for. That's exactly why I'm a wrestling fan.
Absolutely nerdy nonsense. It's great fun.
All right, so everyone should go check that out. That sounds excellent. I know what I'm doing right after we're done recording this. Anthony, you know the deal. Please tell people where they can find you.
Twitter, and currently listening to the recently dropped acclaimed mixtape on Spotify.
Yes.
Which I'll plug because it's 28 minutes of gold, and I love it. Also, I'm just about to go and steal Crocodile Dundee from Sam, so that's literally my plan. He knows what I'm in relation to in regards to the draft. He said that he wants him, so I'm going to go steal him because that's what I do as a heel. But yeah, you can find me at Pro Wrestling Musings. You can find me on Twitter at Anthony Down Under. You can find me on this podcast, and yeah, look, come say hi to me on Twitter. I promise I will not be a heel on Twitter because that's silly. But yeah, look, I always love a good conversation about wrestling. And for a spoiler, my entire roster is built based on memes. So yeah.
You just broke the kayfabe of this show. I can't believe you did that. You're a heel on this show, Anthony. What are you doing?
I'm a heel. Come on, let's go. Heel turn.
All right.
There's enough heels on Twitter. We don't need any more.
Okay, that's fair. That's definitely fair. So we've ended this show. Anthony's a heel because that term was established. Sam's a heel because he likes pineapple on pizza. You can never be a babyface if you like pineapple on pizza. I'm sorry. That's my rule on this podcast. So if you don't like it, keep listening. I don't know what to tell you. So thank you all so much for listening. I have been Griff from GA. You can find me also on ProWrestlingMusings.com. You can also find me over on my personal YouTube channel at General Admission Wrestling, where I also do a lot of really nerdy, really nonsensical things with wrestling video games. So go check that out if you're in the mood for that kind of thing. Follow us on YouTube on the Pro Wrestling Musings YouTube channel. Follow Pro Wrestling Musings on Twitter at PW Musings. Go on our website, ProWrestlingMusings.com. I'm starting to say that more than enough. Ultimately, thank you all for being here. Thank you all so much for listening to us do this. Everyone listening, the fact that we as a community have formed is the whole reason why we do this. So thank you all so much for doing this on a very serious note. We really, really, really appreciate everything that you guys do for us. And hopefully we will see you next week if you did manage to make it all the way through this. Also, go check out the fantasy draft. Well, I expect updates. Every time you guys are on this show. So thank you all so much. Once again, we appreciate you.